Welcome to the Everyman Commentary Podcast. I'm your host, Auguste and Evan, founding editor of the Everyman, and I'm joined by co-host and senior contributor Evan McClanahan. We will discuss the continued intimidation and violence of leftists and the lack of action so far on stopping it. I have a sneaking suspicion that Evan's going to bring up El Salvadorian President Bukele yet again. We will also discuss Trump's new executive orders, Google admitting that it was nipping conservative voices in the bud all along, James Comey getting his comeuppance, and whether Tylenol in the womb gives kids autism. If there's some time left, don't hold your breath. We'll also discuss some closing thoughts on Charlie Kirk's death, since this is pretty much what all of us freelancers have been writing about since he was assassinated 3 weeks ago. But first, let's get to the news, starting with the thing in Dallas. So when this came out, Evan, I'm just like, another week, another attack.
Yeah.
It was in my backyard, so here in Dallas, and it was a guy, copycat killer of the shooter of Charlie Kirk, so Tyler Robinson. And they like etching things into their bullets just to let us know where they're coming from, although the news will continue to pretend that they don't know what's going on. What's Antifa?
Right.
But so, just the details are that he shot at ICE agents and detainees, so illegal immigrants that were detained or in custody. And he shot down, so I think 3 or 4 got shot. I think one actually died. The one who died was a detainee. And what floors me, and maybe I'm understanding this wrong, but it seems like the leftist defense of this is like, well, no, he was shooting at ICE, yes, but he killed an illegal immigrant, so therefore he's not a leftist radical. He actually is probably conservative and hates immigrants. But I mean, it's you laugh. It's so dark and ridiculous, but okay. I don't know, man. I'm just I feel like I'm repeating myself. I think this stuff keeps happening. I think a lot of conservatives that hear this stuff, and not even just conservatives, just Americans, just hearing this stuff, they just sigh. We're tired of it.
Yeah.
We're getting kind of jaded. We're getting pretty impatient. But what are your thoughts about this thing?
My thoughts are that Trump is winning. That
Huh.
if we can take a big picture back, like good things are happening, and this is kind of all they've got left. Um, I wonder when we're going to get serious about it. Did you see the truth post that Trump put out the other day? And it looked like it was a direct message to Pam Bondi, but like it
Yes,
made
I
it
did
on
see
his feed.
that. Yeah, he was saying that he was. I don't know. I don't
It's like not in
understand the
a
context of these. Like, he could
yeah.
just call her, but he wanted to make it public, I guess.
Well, some people theorize that it was a direct message that he kind of put in the wrong spot. Like, I don't know why he would direct message someone in his government over
Yeah,
truth,
right. It would seem like
but
an email or memo or something.
yeah, maybe it's to avoid future subpoena or something. I don't know, but I think that he's frustrated. I think that he's going, why isn't more happening? And I thought that was pretty interesting. But I think that in a way, we can take it as a good sign that, this is we've kind of reached the guerrilla warfare stage of, our the this part of the revolution where there's not a lot of political power on the left actually at the moment. They still have the institutional power, but we're starting to sort of chip away. We're starting to, the detentions and the deportations are starting to happen. Young people's minds are starting to change. So hence Charlie Kirk's assassination was necessary. I mean, I'm not happy about any of this. I'm just saying, you know, um, I'm hopeful that this is a sign that they're losing, and this is kind of all they've got left. So that's me trying to be chipper about it.
This is why we talk, Evan. You're the white
Yeah,
pill because I was
yeah.
black pilling.
Well, and
Now
yeah,
I'm gray pilling.
in terms of like, you know, what do we do about these cells of people going around writing things on bullets? Are they findable? I guess that's my question. I don't know a lot about law enforcement. I don't know a lot about, a Fisher King, who's one of my favorite X follows.
Yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah, so he basically said, wasn't it funny that basically we could convince some guy like literally living in a vacuum repair store to go kidnap Governor Whitmer, and that whole plot was like eight feds and, two homeless guys, right? Exaggerating only a little. But, we can't infiltrate Antifa cells. So it's like why don't we know about these people? We've designated them a foreign terrorist organization. They're obviously communicating with each other. We had a whole show about Reddit not that long ago. I didn't realize that Reddit was pretty censorious. So I thought it was just kind of a free speech platform where all the kind of weirdos hung out, including maybe weirdos on the right.
Well, if you're on
But
the left, yeah, the
yeah,
right
yeah,
wingers have gotten all purged.
yeah. Okay, so like, and to put another a direction in this conversation. I've had some chats on some group chats with some friends. A few are more principled conservatives than me. Think of them as like William F. Buckley, just in my own personal chats, and
Classical liberals, is that what we're
classical
talking about
liberals.
here?
Yes, yes, yes,
Oh man, okay,
and so it's like, well, remember, whatever we do to them could be used against us. This came
yeah,
up with the
yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel conversation, and it could come up in some, I don't know, freedom of association. When it comes to Antifa, after all, we believe in gun rights, right? And these are just gun clubs getting together, like the one on Georgetown where you have the "Hey Fascist" catch flyer that went viral thanks to Andrew Colvett the other day, where it seems like they're recruiting militants, recruiting Antifa members, recruiting future assassinations who are tired of business as usual and who want to make real change. And this is where you go to meet up. So yeah, I wish I knew more about law, you know, uh, policing activities. I would like to know. Like, can we infiltrate these cells? Are they doing illegal things? Can we break them up? They're not very smart. We could probably smell them from about a mile away. What what's the holdup here? I don't know.
Yeah, well, okay. I think there are a few issues going on. I mean, I think it's good that we're hopeful here. I think you're probably right. Maybe these are last ditch efforts. Maybe it's like, well, we're finally getting somewhere because they're reacting. But all this takes money, right? I mean, so I
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
have funding. I mean, and that, that's something I read. It was like these people are getting body armor and they're getting guns and they're getting, calendars and I mean, and they're taking they're making these attacks, and so and you're right to mention the Fed napping. That's what it's called, right? With
yeah,
the Gretchen Whitmer, because it was a lot of entrapment. It's these agents egging on these wackos over in Michigan, like, hey, let's do this, and they're just basically handing over the drugs, handing over like guns, handing over plans, and all this other stuff. And it was all just like it was all a political stunt. I mean, it wasn't a serious attack or whatever. And it just, well, and that's the thing. I think there's something up with the FBI. And I mean, I'm going to be honest. I am not impressed with Kash Patel. He talks a good game and he'll do these podcasts and, go on Joe Rogan and say, oh, so the big's coming. But you know who he reminds me of? And I don't know if you've seen this show, like Parks and Rec. There's the
yeah,
Aziz Ansari character.
yeah.
And he just tries to be cool, but he's a big dork.
So basically,
Yeah.
you're racist. Like all Indians are
Well,
the same to you, or what?
no, it's the same kind of like style of just
Yeah,
communication. Just like he's got it all in control and all this stuff, when in reality he's just a dweeb. And I feel like Kesh Patel is something similar. It's like, oh, he feels like he's in control and he's like very confident. And in fact, I don't know much of what's going on. I don't know if it's just kind of like I think it seems like a lot of the employees at the FBI are just doing their own thing and kind of ignoring Bongino and Patel and whoever
yeah,
else has been appointed by Trump. I'm also kind of disappointed with Bondi.
yeah,
I mean, like you said, I mean, Trump's seems to be communicating in his weird way on Truth Social, like, hey, Bondi, let's do some stuff. Because I can't really say what she's done. I mean, she kind of blundered with the Epstein stuff.
yeah,
And now she's kind of blundering with the hate speech, left wing violence stuff.
yeah.
Um, and I mean, isn't she just like the buddy of Susie Wiles, right?
Yes, they're very close. That's
Yeah,
what I've
so
heard.
it's like this weird
You
like
know.
Florida cartel that's just kind of
Yeah,
part of the cabinet. And I mean, Rubio and Matt Gaetz and some of the others are part of it too. Like they're all just coming from Florida.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I mean, I would think that, and Stephen Miller seems okay. He talks a good game, but I think he's actually done a few things from what I can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all really good PR kind of talker people. Maybe not Bondi. She seems to make gaffes all the time, but I
But
mean, I
she
think
looks
we're all
good on
ready to see
TV,
some action.
and I mean, Trump is a kind of a TV guy. Like he highly values television, and that's not a joke. I mean, that was part of the application process. Is like, are you a good, can you talk a good game and that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I'm with you. You know, I feel like like here's an example. So I'm a fan of Mike Cernovich on X as well. I know you are too. So.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, so the other day, Trump is at the UN, the escalator stops. And I'm like,
But yeah, he went
okay.
nuts over that.
He went nuts over that. And he was like, dude, I want the hardest dudes. I want, I don't know, Ranger Force or something. I don't know what he was talking about, but it sounded like something people would be aware of, like some crew of the army or something that would come in and take charge. Or maybe it's a private outfit. Maybe it's what's the guy's name that does the Eric Prince? Maybe it's his, crew that would do, social or special security,
Sure.
Secret Service. And he was basically like, "This is a dry run. The Chinese know that we're weak." And, we should have locked down. They should have surrounded Trump, guns drawn. Like, we're not taking this stuff seriously. We look like a bunch of pansies. And, I wonder if he's not right. And so I'm kind of like just beyond hopeful that Trump is ever going to just get that hard edge. I just don't think he has it in him. I really don't. I I think that there's just something in him that, in spite of all of our frustration and even rage at how displaced we feel, how angered we are at inaction, and he kind of hints at stuff like maybe we'll go after ABC's, broadcast license, but
Yeah.
nothing ever kind of, not a lot comes after it. I mean, the guy was shot, and you would
Yeah.
kind of think that after that, there would just basically be no holes barred, but it still kind of feels like he's kind of still got the brake pedal going. He's still not demanding, just he's still not willing to risk the apoplectic criticism that's going to come anyway, by the way,
Yeah.
but from hauling ABC before Congress or making them defend their license. I mean, why haven't we arrested Fauci? I don't care if he's pardoned. I mean, like like in the White House, you probably saw this week. There's a picture of an auto pin where Joe Biden is. I don't know if you saw that or not, but like they have all the portraits of the presidents, and so it's like
Oh yeah, yeah,
Trump's
yeah.
first term, and then it's a picture of an auto pen, and now it's Trump's second term, like these 8 by 12 pictures on the wall or whatever, and
Hardy
it's
har
like, well,
har.
that's a great troll. That's a great
Yeah.
troll. So tell me, what are you going to do about the auto pens? I mean, I've heard something about it. I heard about all these pardons, about how he wasn't around, how they have whistleblowers. So, like, are people going to be arrested? Are we going to undo Biden's presidency? Or what? I mean, I so I'm kind of like, I listen really closely then when Vance speaks, because I'm kind of listening for that hardened edge, that
Yeah.
kind of that next level of like, yeah, there are kind of global forces at work and they're really dark and we don't have control of our government. And he's still not naming names either, but he is saying, if you broke the law with Russiagate, for that's the topic right now, given James Comey's indictment or whatever, like, yeah, you're going to be arrested. And some people interpreted that to mean Obama. That's never going to happen. But and again, as I mentioned before, he and Charlie Kirk were very good friends. I tend to think JD Vance is not the same guy as he was a month ago, and I just think he's a younger. He's got that Gen X cynicism about him, and I think he could be a very different guy. And I think it might take until we really kind of see the change that we want. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, I mean, here's my, yeah, I think you're right. I think Trump doesn't want to look, I mean, even though he's called one, he's like, he doesn't want to look like a fascist. He doesn't want to
yeah,
look like an
yeah,
authoritarian guy. And that's always kind of been the irony is that, left tags him as a fascist. I had a kid ask me, like a student, What's fascism? Like, oh man, where do I begin? Like,
Yeah.
there's the actual literal definition of, you
A
know,
bundle of sticks
yeah,
or whatever.
1930s,
Yeah.
yeah, Italy with Mussolini, and then there's kind of the leftist trope about it, about the conservatives, and you know, and so I just kind of worked myself into knots trying to explain this and not be partial or try to be objective about it. And it's such a messy term, and it can mean anything. But okay, let's just take it, for its literal definition, like an authoritarian regime, a government that restricts rights in order to impose law and order and maybe, push a certain agenda, a clear agenda for the whole nation or something. Um, and, I think so. Trump, I think, doesn't want to, he's very sensitive to optics. I mean, I think that's what
Yeah.
we're getting at, right? And that's how he picks his people. And so, a lot of his bark is much worse than his bite. And and so he's just reluctant to bite. He
Yeah.
never bites.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that it's bluffing, because now he's got these people at the head of things. They're great talkers. And keep in mind, in the business world, that's enough, right?
Yeah.
Like CEOs, they're hired for their networking, talking ability. Okay, their bluffing ability.
Yeah.
Um, and so he's kind of hiring in that sense, like, okay, Cash or Pam, like, go bluff away, make them scared, and maybe something will happen. And something sometimes does happen, like on the foreign policy front, he threatens tariffs, and then people come to the table, and we get better deals. But then, I think the left in America, they know to call, they call the bluff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. They call the bluff. They're going to go on funding Antifa groups. They're going to go on brainwashing these kind of incel lefties. I mean, that's what they are.
Yeah.
They're leftist incels. I mean, it's always been a right-wing phenomenon in the popular culture, but it's really a
Well,
left-wing thing.
we joked about Reddit, and like
Yeah,
we kind of highlighted that great article,
the
but
Redditor type.
yeah, but like it's a person. It is a kind of person that I mean, what drives a person to, kind of become Antifa? What drives a person to become a suicide bomber, for that matter? It's ultimately hopelessness. I remember years ago when they talked about the first time I heard about radicalization, it was about young men becoming jihadis.
Yeah,
And one of the arguments was that, well, if you look at where they come from, it's obviously pretty much abject poverty. And
yeah,
also, the rich men in that culture marry multiple women, and there's no hope of marriage for these young guys, right? These young Muslim guys, they'll never have a family. They come from poverty. They'll never get married. There's not going to be any women for them. They're gobbled up by the rich guys. So you might as well, kill yourself and get the 72 virgins, right? So, um, I mean, the afterlife is looking about a lot better than this life. So similarly, we don't have the 72 virgin narrative going on, but in America, there are millions of young people who are nihilist, and that word is being used now by Kash Patel to describe these nihilistic, violent perpetrators or whatever in
yeah.
VPs or something. And so it's like, well, like I don't know how you even define nihilism, but I will say that you and I would probably both agree that there are millions of young people who are utterly lost souls. We used to use that word. We used to use that word to describe like the town drunk,
Yeah.
And now we're talking about people who are really unmoored. They are really adrift at sea. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in country. They don't believe in family. They don't believe uh, they are totally brainwashed that life is hopeless because powerful systems have you know capitalized on all the wealth. They'll never own anything. They've been picked on. They're not attractive, maybe. They're not even sure what gender they are, and they're just adrift. And you and I both grew up in homes where we were given like clarity about
Sure.
like the way the world
We're
works and the way
churched.
life is. Yeah, we were churched.
We're
And
churched.
so, I think this kind of unchurched thing we've been talking about all these years, where the church is like, well, golly gee, we don't have money in the offering plate this week. Actually,
Hmm.
something very, much deeper and darker has been taking place, which is that these are people now two generations removed from church. There's not a Bible in the home. There's no prayer. There's nothing but television. There's nothing but internet in their entire lives. And I mean, violence to them is really not strange at all. What happened on that rooftop at ICE is just, I mean, that's just another day at the office for someone who really has no future, right? Who has no hope. And so what do we do with these people? And you know, yeah, I'm going to mention Bukele because he's giving his nation some kind of purpose. There was a look, I get it. You can call it propaganda or whatever, but there was a clip of him giving a talk to, it looked like middle school kids in their school uniforms, and he was saying, "Yeah, we've had to do some, lock up a lot of bad people, but your future is going to be bright. You're going to have opportunities." And he's unashamedly Catholic. It's a Catholic country now, and he makes no bones about that. Although I think there's, freedom. I mean, I think I could go there and start a Lutheran church if I really wanted to. So I don't know, man. At some point we have to have some kind of national identity, national purpose. We have to take these lost young souls before they all become assassins, because they're so aimless in life. We have to give them a purpose, and I don't think rock bands at your average megachurch are going to do it. How do we get these people on mission? That's kind of got to be like our national, it's at least one of our national, and amid all the other things we have to do, one of our national goals.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you bring that up because I wrote a piece and it's floating around. Freelancing, bro. I'm gonna have to submit it to
Yeah.
other places. But the title was "The Left and the Internet Killed Charlie Kirk,"
Hmm.
and well, really, I go into the whole propaganda apparatus that creates a Tyler Robinson because he grew up in this conservative household. I think it was Mormon in Utah, and the dude's brain just gets totally pickled. I don't know what you call it. I mean, so he looks at a lot of porn and he consumes a lot of this just kind of left wing. It's propaganda. There's not like serious arguments here. This is all just, just kind of repetition. And you get the feeling like, oh, okay, it's a shared sentiment. And it's all sentiment and it's just like kind of memes and stuff. And it's not
Yeah.
deep at all. But I mean, it
Right.
speaks to like this kind of nihilism too. But see, like to get to the nihilism, I feel like, you know, and maybe it's an awkward topic, but I think the pornography is a way in.
Oh, for sure.
Let's just say you have a well-rounded conservative kid. They might even go to church or not, whatever, but they're generally conservative in the household. Maybe they eat dinner together. But he has this dark secret, right? He's just watching nasty stuff online. It gets worse and worse and worse. And I talk about the nature of addiction, because all this works off dopamine. So, all these apps, like social media apps, but definitely porn or violence or whatever, it releases dopamine or it stimulates the
Hmm.
production of dopamine. And, yeah, at first, you only need a little bit and it's satisfying and whatever, but it becomes addictive because you want more, 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 more. And it takes more outrageous stuff to kind of get this dopamine production. And so obviously that's easy enough to kind of think about for pornography or violence, but it's also a thing with ideology, right?
Hmm.
So, you start with socialized medicine or, maybe just like, getting rid of limits on abortion or something like that. Just kind of these more boilerplate issues for the Democrats. And then it just kind of gets a little bit more and more like, well, the other side's a fascist. And so it gets more and more extreme. The algorithm picks up on the fact that this extreme material seems to be much in demand for people who are addicted to an app or something.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of like brain hacking to me that's going on, and that, and I hate that this conversation gets complicated with free speech, blah, 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 blah. Porn is not free speech. We know that. And a lot of this propaganda that calls for violence is not free speech. And a lot of it's just, flat out libel or slander or defamation. Like it's just lies. I mean, you
Hmm.
just say, oh, he's a fascist. Oh, he's a this, he's a that, he's a that. And no evidence or whatever. And people just kind of consume it uncritically. And, you combine the fact that they've kind of cultivated this nasty habit that's really emptied out their soul, that's caused them to really lose their belief in God, and
Hmm.
now they're nihilistic. And it all comes together to make, the perfect extremist, the perfect terrorist. And you're right. I think it's for us, people that are not Zoomers, like millennials and above, we remember the whole profile of a terrorist and Islamic jihadist or whatever. And it's the same idea. They're basically incels. They don't have much going on, and they're kind of given this promise that, oh, you'll get your harem over in heaven or
Yeah.
whatever. And for Westerners who have something of an education, that just seems crazy. It's like, really, people that go for that, but it's like, it's about context. It's about conditioning the individual to accept a lot of these narratives that, on their face, just seem ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's a little bit of a tangent, and it is a can of worms, which is why I'm still probably submitting this piece to places like I don't know, maybe they don't want to get into the weeds about this stuff, but I think it's important to kind of understand like how these mechanisms work to hijack the brain and turn like otherwise normal people into just
Yeah,
wackos.
and I don't know how you deny that. Um, the internet is a far more successful and immediate tool for propagandization, if that's a word. Um, than what we've had to deal with before. I mean, we used to have to wait for Walter Cronkite to brainwash us,
Yeah,
and now it's 1,000 forums out there. So there's a book called Propaganda by Edward Bernays.
yeah, you
Um,
told me about it. Yeah, you mentioned it
yeah.
before.
So that's an interesting book. But a guy named Walter Lippmann wrote a book, which I have by
Oh
my
yeah,
bed.
he's a 1920s, 30s writer guy.
Yeah, 1922. So 2 years actually before the book Propaganda, and it's called I can't remember. Walter Lippmann. It's waiting to be read by my bed at the moment. But public something. And the argument is that these are actually pretty finely tuned skills, of propagandists. That it's nothing new at all, and so that's kind of what we're up against. I think it can be overcome. I'm hopeful. I just think at this point we're kind of at that point of national will. I think that's kind of really where we're at. I think we need to ask ourselves if because again, going back to my friend's conversation, it's like, well, is this a violation of free speech if we don't allow this, or if we don't allow that, or if we don't do this, or we don't do that?
Hmm.
And and maybe the calls of fascism, we've been pulling our hair out. Oh, they called Trump a fascist. That's so terrible. But the
Yeah,
genius of that is, I think you're exactly right. I think what it's done is actually prevented Trump from taking a hold of this nation, and maybe he doesn't have the moral character. Maybe that's the problem too, because he's not a Christian. I mean, I mean, I appreciate that he's like gotten close to the edge, but when I think of a Christian, I think of someone who's given full submission to God, right? Full
yeah,
obedience. And he still seems to like be in a negotiation with God. Like, well, I mean, I did this for you, can't you do this for me? And like it's just not the same thing. And so if he really has this kind of mantle placed on his shoulders to kind of lead this country to the promised land, so to speak, you know, at some point you're going to have to give the speech that's going to alienate a good percentage of this country. And you're basically going to say this is who we are and this is the direction we're going. And you're going to have to use force. And by that I mean legal force, cultural force. You're going to have to force this country in your direction. And let me just say this. It's not impossible. It's going to take a while, but Jeffrey Tucker, I follow him on X. I think he's
yeah.
with
I like
like the
him.
Brownstone Institute. Smart guy. And he just today, basically is saying the Wall Street Journal, because all this hand wringing about executive power, well, there are over 400 agencies that are arguably almost all unconstitutional, strictly speaking, under
Yeah,
the executive branch. So you can't the state apparatus can't give to the executive on the one hand and then later be like, oh, he's got too much power. Look, like we need to radically, like if we're serious, we're going to have to end up radically, downsizing government. And so that would be, a part of the picture as well. Someone basically saying like we're actually going to go back to a constitutional form of government that serves the people. And that's just going to be destabilizing. It just is. So I'm not that hopeful in the immediate future that like these sorts of attacks are going to just stop because I think it's kind of all they've got left.
yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So I'll leave it there. Yeah. But
You
that's
know, it's
that's where we
funny.
got to go in the long run.
What you're saying kind of reminds me of an article I read by uh, kind of a fellow traveler. His name is Adam Elwanger. He's actually over in Houston, and he's a professor of rhetoric.
Hmm.
Uh, and so he'll freelance too, and so I've gotten to know him a little bit. And so he wrote a piece for Chronicles talking about messaging. He just kind of makes, I mean, what would seem like an obvious point, but it's not mentioned enough that, you know, when the left loses, like an election, or they're just not very popular, they say, "Oh man, we got to work on our messaging." And the irony that Elwanger points out in his article is that no, that's all they have. They're actually really good at messaging. I mean, say what you want about the left. I mean, they're bereft of real ideas, but man, they're good at messaging just the garbage that they spew.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the thing. It's just like, well, you're just advocating pretty bad policies that don't really help anyone, so they're just not very popular, but you can market it really well. I mean, part of it helps that you own a lot of the media apparatus, but and so I thought that was interesting. So, like, if you're taking this approach, like, well, we're going to counter message and we're going to create a new narrative. I mean, you can try, or you could just kind of impose the policies that people voted for,
Yeah.
which takes a little bit more work. But I mean, if you're just kind of reduce this to, if you're going to play on the Democrats' terms, which really is all about messaging, all about using certain words and phrases and repetition, um, you're probably not going to win. I mean, it's just you're just kind of fighting this battle with your hands behind your back kind of thing. I think it's like, no, no, no. Let's just kind of return to policy. And, we don't need to take back words, or we don't need to impose counter narratives, or, kind of overcompensate in that regard. It's just, we can just enforce the law. And yes, there'll be, pushback and all this, but whatever. You mentioned the executive thing. I mean, there's so many agencies, and really, I think when people think about American politics, they just think about the executive and voting for president. I actually wrote a whole piece. Like, I don't think most people even know who their senators are or who their reps are for sure. And if you get to the state level or even the local level, like, they don't know who those people are. They're just kind of voting for a president to do everything. Um, but more, and I don't know if I appreciate that. I mean, that's just my thing about classical liberals. Some of the friends that want to talk about these abstractions like free speech and all that, and it's like, well, we have a constitution and we have lawmakers, and like they don't do anything. I wanted to bring this up because this was kind of making its rounds on X. Ted Cruz, man, our senator. Uh, he looks like crap, by the way. I mean, he's
Mm.
gained some weight and just kind of looks like Santa Claus or something. I mean,
Kind of in the Orson Welles like later stages or something.
yeah, he
Yeah.
just doesn't look healthy, and it's I don't know. So
I think that
he
Tucker
just
interview just like wrecked him, REKT wrecked him. So,
oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, well, so
yeah.
anyway, the video, if you saw it, it was just like he just makes a statement. He's just saying, "Hey, please stop." And I think everybody just looks at it like, ugh. I mean, no one got behind it. I mean, it
Yeah.
just looks so pathetic.
Yeah, he's another guy. He came up with the Tea Party,
Yeah,
great talker, like Harvard debate champion or whatever. Obviously a very, sharp guy, knows his Constitution, but the moment has passed him by. We're not, we're kind of done with the Tea Party talking points, and even I think about Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk came up with the turning with the Tea Party, and his arguments he wanted to make on government or on these college campuses were about you know government waste and abuse and overspending. Like big government sucks.
yeah,
Doesn't that seem like a quaint slogan to you? I mean, like, aren't we kind of beyond like thinking that big government is the sum of our problems? It's not a big government. It's like an all-encompassing state slash culture, that we're really up against. It's just a culture of death, you could say. It's a culture of death and all of its various apparatuses, that were, and I think Charlie Kirk certainly understood that and he pivoted. Like, I don't know that Ted Cruz has really ever kind of moved on from, the 1980s, Ronald Reagan heyday, and that's what we're trying to get back to. I am not trying to get back to the Ronald Reagan heyday, okay? Let's
yeah.
say that clearly. Like that was not the golden age at all. It was all right, I guess, but Reagan certainly had his limitations. He had spiritual limitations. He also, as far as I can tell, was not really a believing Christian. Not in a kind of born again sense or like a late in life Catholic convert sense or anything like that. So it was still kind of playing on the edges. And
Yeah.
so Ted Cruz kind of feels like a guy playing on the edges. I vote against him in the primary. I voted against him because
There
last
was
I
like
think
no one though. Who did you vote? There was like
no,
some guy named Red, I think.
I didn't even care. I was like, I'm making a statement.
I'm with you
Gosh
though.
darn it.
I was very frustrated with him.
He said something about the J6ers being terrorists. I don't know if
Yeah,
you're,
that was
yeah,
bad.
that was like unforgivable. I'm like, look, dude, like we know what terrorism is, and that was at worst a riot, And anyway, and apparently, as we're learning today, there were 275 feds on the ground, so that kind of
Yeah.
makes you wonder.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's there's something. He's lost his mojo. He hasn't adapted. You got to adapt. The political landscape. It's not just the politics. I mean, I'm not a political pundit. I pay attention to religion and culture. Those things are far more interesting to me, and all of that has shifted. And
Yeah.
he doesn't seem to be aware of that. So I'm pretty disappointed. So
Well, you know what's interesting about Ted Cruz, and I've followed him and I've written about him and even like his podcast. I don't know if it's still going, a verdict.
yeah.
Um, but Ted Cruz has a knack for making speeches about lost causes after the opportunity has passed. He'll just say certain things, and it seems like a brave stance. And you're like, yeah, but Democrats, like maybe Democrats have the majority, and nothing's going to happen. And I mean, I think he was one of the early types of politicians to, you know, make little clips of himself for social media and look like a tough guy. He got very friendly with Daily Wire people and would get invited a lot, and he kind of embraced all that. But I think again, it's just all PR. I don't think he was really, his heart wasn't in it, and he's again kind of more the classical liberal mold.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing just how limited that stance is. I don't think populist conservatism, it can't just be words and it can't just be appeals to, the founding fathers. I had a guest, Jeremy, who's very much like this, and I love Jeremy, and we can talk about a lot, and I think we agree on a lot, but he's very much the older model of kind of Reagan, constitutional, classical liberal conservatism,
This is the
and
teacher.
just kind of fails to see what's going on, in my
Hmm.
view, right? And I think as the years pass and as we have these crimes happen and these things happen, I think that kind of, I mean, this is his thing. I mean, Ted Cruz, he's not the only one. Actually, I think
Mm.
you had quite a few senators who, for a while, looked pretty good, and they kind of came in with the Tea Party, and they were like principled opposition. And now they're just kind of going sour, like just bad milk or something. I mean, it's
Whereas
just.
I would say
Yeah.
Ron Johnson is sort of aging like fine wine, because
I
he's
like
he's a
Rod Johnson, yeah, in
yeah he's
Wisconsin.
he yeah, but see, he's adapting, right? He
Yeah.
he's one of these guys. Look, we all. I remember when Rush Limbaugh would defend, pharmaceutical companies, right? Because of all the R&D they do, right? And how long it
Uh-huh.
takes. There's a whole chapter in Milton Friedman's Free to Choose about, the red tape involved in FDA drugs and how we need to reduce the red tape, actually, how we need to get more experimental drugs in the market. And that's kind of a separate question because if you're going to die of cancer anyway, you might as well try an experimental drug, and we would probably
Yeah.
agree with that. But the defense of the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm not saying Rush Limbaugh was taking pharma money or something like that. I think he was just your average conservative who looked at pharmaceutical companies as your corporations who create life-saving products. And, we kind of need to be on their side because that's kind of what we do as conservatives. We kind of take the side of the corporation and so Ron Johnson would have believed that too, because that's pretty much what all normal middle of the road conservatives who had their, AM radio on when they were driving around town in their pickup truck, that's kind of what we all believed. And look at the 180 he's done. I mean, COVID was a shot in the arm and all this, but he's a guy who's adapting. He's
Yeah.
evolving. His mind is changing. And he's got a more cynical, suspicious at least, outlook on things. So Yeah, I mean, Marco Rubio might be another good example.
Yeah,
Although I think
Rubio
most
is
of
who
us
I'm
are,
thinking of too, or
yeah,
Vance. I mean, you know.
yeah. Uh, so I think it's the questions before us are, I mean, again, and Rush, he was at the tail end of the Reagan years. And he was kind of the guy who got us through the Clinton years, and it was kind of always like remember the good old days, with Ronald
Yeah.
Reagan, and that's kind of what we're kind of constantly getting back, and like the left as a cultural and moral force is just it's just changed, and it anyway. So I think Cruz kind of outlived. I'd like to see some fresh blood. Texas does have some pretty good young folks out there.
Yeah, we have my rep, Brandon Gills.
Brandon Gill. Yeah.
He's pretty good. And then, well, I think is it this year? I think in November. Wait, no, next year. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be
John Cornyn
the
could take
Cornyn.
over. Yeah.
And
The
so, well, no, I think Paxton's
well,
challenging him,
Paxton
right?
Cornyn. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm all for Paxton. I mean, Cornyn, man, this is the
Yeah.
thing about red states. I know. I mean, Texas stands out sometimes, but they all, they're red states. They're conservative, and they seem to kind of be the leaders of the movement. And yeah, we have like the most milk toast. Uh, you know, not really that inspiring kind of senators and
Well,
stuff. I mean,
the
Oklahoma's kind of that way. They have Langford and
yeah,
um,
isn't that weird? Yeah.
I know.
There's a theory that, in states that are one or the other, like sort of heavily blue or heavily red, that basically people from the other party will kind of switch, and that's how they get that's how they moderate the state actually back.
Yeah,
So
that's okay.
basically
That's
the
fair.
the the theory is that that's why we, even though conservative people in Texas, want a Republican House and a Republican Speaker of the House. We have not been represented well, and we've had these speakers make deals with Democrats, and that's the
Yeah.
theory is that basically a lot of the Republicans in the Texas House are basically Republicans in drag, and
Well,
and
yeah. So
and
you got the
yeah,
rhinos, and then you have the Dems, and then they get together to kind
yeah,
of like
form a
outvote
supermajority.
the
Yeah,
conservative,
yeah.
Republicans. And
And
so
it can be again, it can be overcome. I'm not hopeless. I mean, we
sure.
did overturn I think five rhinos with good conservatives in the Texas House
Yeah.
primaries
Well,
last
I think
last year. So
Abbott kind of called them out. Well, you know what's funny though? I mean, and I was pretty deliberate, you know, voting for my state reps. Like normally, I don't know too much about it. You
yeah,
see, oh,
same.
okay, whatever. But no, I mean, I actually did get annoyed that my own state rep or senator, uh, he voted to impeach Paxton, and to me, that was like the okay, this guy is
Yeah,
trash. I don't want him.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's just, or they vote against school choice. Okay, guy's trash. Get rid of him.
Yeah.
Because I'm
How can
for
you say
school
that as a
choice.
teacher?
I
Yeah,
know. I'm one
I
of
know you've
the.
written about that a lot. We should
I'm a
talk about that
scab.
one day.
But we don't even have a union here in Texas. I mean, I think we have like an association and certain lobby groups, but no, I mean, school choice. Yeah, I've read a lot about it, and I actually think it might be a good thing for teachers. Instead of what we have now, which is like, well, most competitive we get with schooling is just like football or something. Okay, let's move on though. I mean, I don't know if there's much to say about this. So Trump this morning or yesterday issued three executive orders. He's bringing back capital punishment for federal crimes. He's minimizing Chinese ownership of TikTok. I think that was kind of the headline. Because I think some people were wondering. I know my students were wondering, like, so we gonna keep TikTok? Like, man, I hope not, but whatever. So that was the second one. And then designating Antifa. I thought he already did this, but I guess he did it again.
He did like a
Designating Antifa
he
as a
did like a
terror group or something.
proclamation. Yeah, he did like a proclamation the other night, and so this is an executive order. I don't know. I
And so, okay, so I mean, like I say, I'm a little bit jaded and black pilled. I mean, maybe dark gray pilled. Um,
Well,
I
yeah,
don't
if
know,
you go
man. I
back,
mean,
yeah.
does this mean anything, or is it just like, okay, he's saying stuff?
Yeah, I'm all the executive orders and stuff were really fun. Like the first couple of weeks,
Yeah, I
after
know.
inauguration, you're
I'm
like,
not
all right, we
excited
got,
about them.
yeah, well, because I think we intuitively know they can be overdone, or overwritten, the next, if we lose the next election, and this stuff needs to be enforced legally. I mean, you see how hard it is to pass a law. I mean, you've got the filibuster in the Senate. You've got, a small minority in the House. Now, again, to try to be hopeful about it, the census and some of this redistricting could give
Yeah,
Republicans some
fair.
slightly bigger majorities. And if we can primary people like Senator Langford, in Oklahoma, in the years to come, we can start to make the Senate more and more reflective of the people. But yeah, it's hard to get legislation passed, which means it would be hard for a future administration to undo it. So that really needs to be the priority, not the executive orders. By the way, has Trump done too much in the Oval Office, like with the gold? Uh, every time I look, there's like another gold frill on the wall, and
I don't know. I don't watch the videos. I mean, I just kind of read.
yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, he's put up like 300 portraits of presidents on the walls in the Oval Office, and which I think is kind of cool. But anyway, look at some Twitter post about how drab it looked. In fact, I'd want your brother, the architect, to comment on this. How drab the Oval Office was in the Obama years. It looked
Hmm.
like a bachelor's apartment, and
Well, his
now
his public library or whatever presidential library
oh
looks
my
pretty.
goodness, that looks like a
Yeah, it's an
Star
eyesore.
Wars,
It's not nice.
death
It
base or
sucks.
something. Yeah. So yeah, the aesthetics of the left are something to talk about. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, okay, I got the executive orders. Like, I don't know. When they start rounding up Antifa cells, I'll be like, oh, okay, executive orders work. But until then, I want to start seeing some legislation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just more barking. I mean,
Yeah, feels that way.
it's just more like, oh, we're coming after you. Okay, I'm getting the, I don't know, I'm getting the belt, man.
Yeah,
Uh, and
yeah.
I don't
Daddy's
know.
threatening
I think you're
again.
right. It was fun at the beginning, but now I think we're all just kind of tired of it, and we want to see some real action and some real numbers.
Yeah, the
Um,
TikTok thing, I honestly, I mean, Charlie Kirk, again, you just see what a dominant force he was. He's got his
yeah,
hands in like all these pies. It's kind of wild. But the guy racked up billions of views on TikTok. And
yeah.
actually, I sit in front of my church and I talk to college students. And if you go to our church website, flhouston.org, you can see me have some of those conversations. In fact, I had about an hour long conversation about abortion this week. That was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
But obviously, I don't have 3,000 people wondering what I'm going to say next. So, but there was a guy who stopped by a couple weeks ago. He's like, "Hey, man, I've seen you on social media," and I was like, "No, no, no, it's not me.
Oh,
It's not me. I think you're talking.
TikTok celebrity.
I think you're thinking of Charlie Kirk. I think I look just enough like him. To where you're getting me confused. But
Oh,
the
white
point
guy.
was,
Yeah.
I do talk to college students, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, I watch Charlie Kirk on TikTok," and so I don't know. The Twitter files changed the game because once that got exposed, how there were these back doors with the FBI and all that, and now YouTube is theoretically relenting on some of its censorship. Uh, I, there's a part of me that's pretty hopeful that even something like TikTok can be a net positive. I think as an educator, though, the brain rot that comes from the algorithms, and so I don't know what to do about that. I Does Bukele allow endless scrolling on Facebook Reels? That's what I want to know.
Maybe the poverty in El Salvador keeps it on wraps. Well,
I
you know
mean,
what? Okay, I
yeah,
mean I'm with you, and that's actually something that I kind of conclude with in the article that I'm floating around about, the internet and its propaganda power. All households have a responsibility. They can. And I don't mean to sound libertarian and say that the government can't help them, but I think all parents need to be aware that, don't look at TikTok like, oh, it's just an outlet for information. No, it's an addictive app.
yeah, yeah.
It's like taking a drag from a cigarette, okay? I mean, just kind of approach it that way. And I'm sure in small doses, if you're just wanting to get Evan McClanahan's take on abortion, and 40 seconds or less, go for it. But obviously they're just consuming. It's really mindless stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what kills me about TikTok. I mean, so even if it serves like a TPUSA campaign, I mean, I mean, I remember I was waiting in line. I was at the Fort Worth Botanical Gardens, which are very nice, by the way.
Hmm.
And you're just waiting in line. It's like the butterfly exhibit or whatever. And so you have a bunch of families, and I just see a kid giving an, I think it was like an iPhone. It wasn't an iPad, but whatever. And the kid's just like looking at boxes being opened, like again and again and again and again and again and again. It's just boxes being opened and just different color boxes. And like it was mindless, just
Yeah.
mindless, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe some techno music or something. I don't know, but so I don't know if there's any really redeemable qualities. I mean, I don't think Trump has the authority, and I think it would be a very bad look for him to just kind of try to ban TikTok on just the well, and everybody kind of knows it's a pretext to say, oh well, China's collecting your data. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so is like the rest of the world. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Facebook's collecting my
Yeah.
data. YouTube's collecting my data right now. I mean, everybody's collecting our data, and not to say that's a not a problem. I mean, it is a problem, but you're not going to fix it with an executive order, or you're not going to. I mean, honestly, if you, I think about this, like I would say, like I think Facebook or Google would be very happy to see TikTok banned because that's their
Yeah.
competitor.
Yeah.
And if Trump were to go that far, it would be on their behalf, not
Mm.
really to,
Hmm.
protect our data. Okay, I think it's a total power, and that's why you have like Zuckerberg cozying up to Trump's like, hey, oh yeah, that China's bad, because they're trying
Yeah.
to sell
Yeah.
Reels and Instagram or whatever. So or YouTube Shorts. So no, I think it's just important for households. Just my parting remark on this one is families and parents really need to be, don't give your kids smartphones if you can help it. But I mean, TikTok is just, it's bad. It's
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
bad. It's
Yeah.
it's addictive. It's a drug. Treat it like a drug. If you need to like limit it or, whatever, or, or even this like, because I mean, I have kids in my classes, like the first few weeks there, you could see the withdrawals, man. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, it hacks into their mind like that.
Because there are no more phones in your classroom, right?
It's been great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been interesting because, I'm getting pre 2010 teaching vibes. It's funny, like some of the
Yeah.
behaviors, like the kids are more active, they're a lot more chatty, which, is okay on one level and a
Why?
challenge on
Why
another.
haven't there been some European countries that kind of like ban smartphones for
Yeah, they're
kids?
they're ahead of us. Like I think UK, I think
How do
France.
they get away with that? Like, are we just too diverse and too big that we just America just can't do that kind of stuff? You think? Or
No, I think just these are big companies that make a lot of money. I mean, and
yeah.
that's the thing. Like a lot of schools, beyond just like the phone policy, is that all these schools have school districts. I don't mind this tangent. This is good. Um, they have technology, right? So they have Chromebooks or they have iPads, and they buy them from Google or Apple. And so Google and Apple, that's like a big chunk of their profit is just from school districts. Um, and so then they buy these things and like, well, we got to use these things. And it's like, well, it seems a little, contradictory to say they can't use their phone, but they can use their Chromebook to use these educational apps, blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
So I think there's a lot of compromise among leadership in districts and in state governments. I think there's pressure on them to kind of be very, loose about phone policies because kids are their customers, of
yeah.
these companies. So, I mean, I know that's all very cynical, but I think that's the case. Like, why were we so slow? And there's still a lot of misunderstanding. I mean, why don't parents like know this through and through? Like you and I know it, but it doesn't seem like a lot of parents that are Gen X or older seem to get it. They're like, oh yeah, I'll give my kid a phone, keep him safe, blah blah blah, and they don't think too hard. Like, dude, these are addictive devices,
Yeah.
and especially and TikTok is like the nadir. It's like you're really getting rock bottom as far as like just there's no educational or moral value to this. This is
You
just
know, and
fudge.
TikTok's pretty old. I mean, it's like 10 or 12 years old. You know what I mean? It's
TikTok.
not. Yeah.
I thought it was like COVID or like
No. No,
2019,
man.
2020, no?
Well, even if it was 2019, that's 6 years old. I
Yeah,
think
I guess that's
it,
true.
it's not like the latest thing. And so I keep wondering, like, is there going to be another thing that's even good? Because the only thing that would trump it, right, would be something that's even more dopamine, whatever, right? Like even
Hmm.
shorter, faster, more extreme. And I'm like, can you get any more mindless and quick than TikTok? That would be terrifying to see. So, but nothing really has usurped it, you know, uh, other than maybe, well, the Facebook versions of it, or even X has a for you setting, right, where it's TikTok like content. So I don't go on there because like I just follow who I follow and I
Yeah.
use it as a news platform. So yeah, you have to have discipline about that. And that's what I've said to my kids who don't have phones yet. But I'm like, when you do, you have to use social media in a responsible way. Follow who you want to follow for helpful content. Have a little
Hmm.
bit of fun with it, and but don't just take the algorithm where they're wanting you to go. So
Yeah, I mean, I think when I use Twitter, X, whatever, um, I have the place limits on myself. I mean,
yeah,
it really does. There's something about it, you know, that gets you sucked in. I don't
yeah,
know, and
sure.
you want to post too, um, and none of it's rational. It's like below rational, and
It's
that kind
lizard
of gets you
brain.
hooked.
It's lizard brain stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, on the
Yeah,
weekends, I refuse to go on X, and that's been a good policy to have. And then like even during the day, like I can't really get on X during like the school day because we
yeah,
have firewalls,
sure.
which is good. So I
Yeah,
mean, they're just
yeah,
like things like that. It's like, and I don't really have
yeah,
time, so
yeah.
so I don't end up spending too much time on X, but I could if I had that time, you know. Um, okay, well, and speaking of which, speaking of these wonderful big tech platforms. The other news this week was YouTube, Google finally explained that they were shutting down conservative voices. This was mostly during COVID, but I think it was going on before then too. And I mean, I have a few thoughts on this. I mean, I don't know if I have anything new to add to it. I feel like we all knew this, but now it's like more official. How do you think we should take this revelation that that Google was doing this to conservative voices specifically?
I think Matt Walsh has some great takes on this. First of all, we
Hmm.
should be outraged. We should totally be outraged, especially with the Jimmy Kimmel thing. I mean, a lot of other people have put this in perspective, right? Where he was taken off the air for a few days, and conservatives have been banned and shadow banned, including the president of the United States, by these platforms. And we should not be happy that we should not feel like this is some kind of great victory. We should still be mad. We should still go
Yeah,
after them. We should use this admission against them and some kind of class action or government action to the tunes of millions and billions and trillions of dollars, if that's what it takes. Also, Matt Walsh's point is it any coincidence that now that we're not banned, we're winning, again? I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know if I can say that for sure, but it's an interesting theory worth thinking about as time goes on. That as the Charlie Kirks were on TikTok, once that platform opened up to not face the because they banned more than anybody. I mean, all the conservatives were banned from TikTok. So yeah, I don't think it's anything new. It's a question of what stage of the revolution are we in? Are we gonna be like, oh, okay, you said you're sorry, okay, or are we gonna be like, oh, okay, you've been banning us. Let's explore this. Let's keep going. Let's find out who was doing this, and let's arrest some people. I mean, can we arrest that Chan guy, that Elvis Chan guy? Is that possible? For colluding with
you're gonna have to remind me.
Twitter. He was the FBI agent who was kind of the backdoor contact to the
Oh, that's right, that's right, that's right.
that weirdo guy, the hookup. Who was the guy at Twitter who wrote about hooking up with young men? Anyway,
I don't,
doesn't matter. Anyway,
I don't know, man. I don't
so
know.
yeah, I'm that's all. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it. I think we should not feel like it's a win. I think we should be like it's we're in the process of winning, and we should stay frosty, as Jack Posobiec would say, stay frosty.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, what's interesting about all that is that I just like to do a mental experiment, just thinking about all these conservative voices. I mean, that's how I look at it. You know, we have a flourishing ecosystem. You got your big voices, you got your more independent voices like us.
Hmm.
You know, and it's just crazy to think that, I mean, this really affected a generation of potential spokespeople. You know, and it makes a huge impact when you're thinking about people starting off their, you know, their little podcast channel or, you know, their YouTube
Hmm.
channel, or, I mean, this extends even to Twitter, which was just banning people left and right. Um, you know, and not really providing protection for people. Like I can't do Twitter under my own name because if I do, I'm just going to get trolled and hassled and then doxxed and all that stuff. But no, I just think about this really does change the overall landscape because that's what people are working off of. It just seems like, well, it seems like lot of people are saying this or a lot of people are saying that. You know, even just instances of leftist violence. Like if no one's talking about it, like if a tree falls in the
Yeah.
woods and no one's there to hear it, well, did it fall? You know, if a conservative figure gets shot or beaten up by a lefty, by an Antifa member, you know, did it really happen? If all the media says, well, what's Antifa? What's this? So just that ability to craft a narrative, that ability to kind of just, you know, silence voices, it's powerful. Um, it's not everything though. You know, and I know, I mean, and I guess that's where I get back to. It's like, okay, I think we finally realize how powerful it is to have you know, a good, to have voices, to reinforce those voices, to kind of create a more, this kind of ideological landscape that's more conducive to American flourishing. Um, but, you know, I mean, we also got to do the work. I mean, I know that's a lefty expression, but, you know, you got to do the work, guys. You got to marry, have your kids, got to work, be gainfully employed, got to, you know, support beautiful things and create beautiful
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I feel like that's getting lost. Now we're getting kind of obsessed with the surface level stuff and just the aesthetic, maybe
Yeah.
online aesthetic to be, you know, more specific. But um, okay, well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. To me, the whole news was just like, well, nothing new here.
Yeah.
I'll add one more thing because we're kind of reaching our hour.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're not going to talk about autism and Tylenol. I wrote a thing. We'll see if it gets picked up somewhere, but I don't know. I think we covered a lot of it in our episode 9.
Yeah. I think so.
Let's talk about Comey. This is like the week of old news that I thought everybody knew, but maybe they didn't. So we have Jim Comey. He gets indicted for lying to Congress and Russia hoax stuff. Um, Comey's kind of funny to me. I mean, I know he's a reptile. They all are. But I like, well, he was kind of famous for like talking about Trump in these very dramatic theatrical terms, like, oh, he touched me. You know? And it's like, this guy's the FBI director, but he seems to be like writing up these kind of cinematic set pieces
Yeah.
um, to just kind of exonerate himself or something. Anyway, I don't know. So what do you, again, I'm just in a cynical mood. I'm like, yeah, all right, I guess he's indicted. I don't know what that's going to really do. Are there going to be more of this? Is this going to lead anywhere? Or did Trump need a win, just an easy win, and so he decided to drop the hammer on Comey?
I'm gonna say there's gonna be more. I
Okay.
follow Mike Davis, Article 3 Project,
Oh, I
and
like him. Yeah.
yeah, I mean he's kind of out there. I mean, just in terms of kind of saying, politically incorrect things, and I think he's pretty keyed into what's going on, and he's making predictions, and his predictions have pretty much come true by and large. So I think he's saying that you're going to see a lot more indictments, and remember, indictments are easy to get, and
Hmm.
arrests. I think he's turning himself in this morning or something. So I think we're going to see some arrests and mugshots and things. And um, you know, I think you have to make the case to the public. I think it's got to be clear. There's got to be a narrative, right? That kind of breaks through. That Trump is not just going after his enemies. That he's not just on a revenge tour, but these were people that worked to kind of overthrow the Trump administration, and what they did was wrong, and he's going to go after him. So I think we'll see more of it. I think that this is again similar to the earlier conversation about, is it a political loser though? Like, do we need to be above it all? This is kind of the this is kind of where the conservative movement is maybe a little bit stuck. You've got people kind of saying, let's go all out. The people will back us. This is my position. The people will back us. They want action. Actually, what frustrates Republicans is the inaction. That we
Mhm.
basically are like, we're given like a morsel of food every day to survive, but we're never given enough to like be fully satisfied that our government is actually like working for us, right? And if you do that, you'll get us. Just trust us. We'll be there for you. Even though the media is saying these people are crazy, you could never follow such people. Then the other side are the classical liberals who are like, we're the rule of law people, we're the law and order people, we're the principled people, we're the slippery slope people, we're the they'll use it against us people, da 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 da. And so that's always like the brake pedal to why nothing ever gets done. So I think that's the inflection point where we're like, all right, are we going to really go after people, for Russiagate, for lying under oath, for spying on his campaign? Uh,
So you think what's holding us back is just really this kind of old habit we have? I mean, it's almost. I mean, I know there are representatives and people that we can point to, but it's just this instinct that Republicans and conservatives have just to, well, we don't want to go crazy here.
yeah, I think so. I mean,
But
I think it's real. I don't think it. I mean,
that's really
that's
where
used
we're
against
at. It's
us.
just okay. We have to resolve this. Um,
I think so, and
okay.
and it can be resolved if there's a will, and if
You
you
know,
if you
well,
it's
I
the
was
sort
going to
of
ask you
thing
if you see
where
this cartoon. It's like a political cartoon. Yeah, and it's just showing like a football player, and I think he has conservative or Republicans or GOP, I think GOP on his jersey, and he's just running to the touchdown, and he's like, yeah, and everybody's cheering him on, and he makes it to the 1 yard line, and then he just like kneels and says, "Slow and steady win the race." And I feel like, yeah,
yeah, that's
that
funny.
seems to be what's going on.
Or it's like we're in the fourth quarter of a close game, and if you call a blitz, there's risk, right? You live or
Sure.
die by the blitz, right? But you could definitely cement the victory if the blitz is successful, and like the crowd will be behind you, or if you go for it on fourth down. There's a risk reward factor going on in our politics right now, where it's like if we go for it, we win. You know, but if we do the prevent defense thing, or if we punt and hope to get one more possession with two timeouts and the 2 minute warning so that we can do one more drive later, that kind of approach, we can maybe win. And like, I think that's where we're at. So these sorts of arrests, I think, indicate we're on that path toward blitzing. We're going for it on fourth down. And I think if we did that, the people would ultimately back us. I mean, and I'm not saying 100% of the people, I'm saying 52% of the people, and that's kind of what it's going to take for a while. It's going to take, I guess, winning at the political level. I mean, Charlie Kirk, again, to invoke his name, he understood that. You got to win, and then you
Yeah.
start to execute, on the power that you have. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm hoping more people come along to that. And it's not that we're losing our principles, it's that we're using the same power the left would. So,
Well, what's interesting is that I think for a long time, and maybe others were like this, like I saw it as a generational thing,
hmm
and actually I don't know if that's the case really. So I always thought about, oh, okay, the older generation, the boomer cons are the ones really holding us back, and they're the ones that tell us to slow down and, kind of get nostalgic about Reagan stuff.
right, right.
And that the younger set were more interested in, like using the power that we voted for and all this stuff. But I've actually changed because there are older people, older conservatives that really do want to see action and they
hmm
support Trump and the MAGA agenda. And it could be like Gen Xers, like Ted Cruz, these types that I think it's probably maybe more of a class thing. Like if you're doing pretty well and life is treating you well and you're making a good
That's a good point.
salary and
Yeah.
you own property, like, well, you don't want to see too much
And that's
change.
and that's what the boomers. That's why we associate with the boomers
We
because
just,
they.
yeah, because there are
Yeah.
boomers that, enjoy that kind of lifestyle. But I
Yeah.
think for the younger set, like especially aspiring Zoomers, or millennials that are kind of stuck in a place. It gets to be more class and lifestyle more so than actually generation. Because I mean, you got older middle class, just boomer generation people, but I think they're ready to see some kind of action, and they're the ones reading our stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
not all of them, but yeah, I
yeah,
mean, and they support us, so to me that just signals that this is not generational. You have, and I think it's probably the majority. You're probably right. It's like I think the majority are ready to see some action. Obviously, they're very vocal on social media, but but really, what's holding us back is you're right. This kind of impasse with like, well, people that are not used to this kind of action and execution of policy, and but I mean,
it,
I think I'll be optimistic like you. I think we'll get there. I
yeah.
mean,
The bottom line is if we're gentlemen to them, they're not going to be gentlemen in return. And I think as we understand that, it's like, well, let's
yeah.
just use our power then, So
All right. Well, let's end there. As always, I think this was great, and I'm always grateful for your take, Evan. And of course, I'm always grateful for you, our listeners, for supporting us and listening to our shows. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our Substack, everymancommentary.substack.com, as well as this podcast. We are on Apple, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. We'll be back again next week. Until then, go touch some grass, read some good books, hug a loved one, and go in peace.